What's going on, guys? Today is a story time. I wanted to talk about the time that I leaked an album online, a metal album, a good week before its release date, and how that actually happened and my kind of thoughts about it. I think about this story a lot, so I thought it'd be interesting to kind of share it with you guys because it's always fascinating to me to kind of look back on how we interacted with music back in the day versus now that we've got like Spotify and all these things. Let's take a little trip down memory lane and let me set the scene. All right.
Yeah, it's rewind time.
So this was in 2008. This was a death metal, deathcore, let's call it, album. And it was my most anticipated album to come out in a long time. And to this day, I think is still one of the more top tier albums, in my opinion, of the genre. I'm going to leave it at that. I'm not going to name any more specifics, and I'm not going to talk about any specific websites or stores or anything like that. Not that I'd probably get into any fucking shit like 13 years later, but let's not taunt anyone.
Stop right there, criminal scum!
Back in the day, if you wanted to listen to music on your phone or even your computer, you had to own a copy of the file, right? Like you could have a CD and put it into your CD player and listen to it like that. But if you wanted to listen to it on your computer without the CD there, or if you wanted to put it onto your phone, you had to have those physical files on your computer or your device. It was a lot different than now, whereas you just open up Spotify and you just have music readily available. You can listen to it. You don't even have to have the songs downloaded. You can stream everything. Internet is at a point where that's possible and these services exist. But back then you couldn't. And on top of that, listening to an album on day one, like day of release, was pretty hard to do unless it was a really big artist that you absolutely knew would have copies in your like local music store. It was really hard to get your hands on some of these albums on day one. Usually it was pre-orders, and sometimes they came earlier, but most of the time they came later. Other times you had to put in requests at music stores to get the album shipped, and then you'd be able to pick it up there. So it was hard to get, especially anything more like niche or like deathcore or like very alternative stuff. It was really hard to get stuff on day one. So I used services like Limewire, which was something after Napster, but the same kind of concept. And basically you'd be able to download individual songs. You wouldn't be able to download like a full album, and that was a whole other thing because you'd want the full album. Well, you'd have to find each song individually, and then they'd all be kind of tagged differently. They'd probably have different qualities. Sometimes it was fake files, and sometimes you'd run into viruses and stuff like that. So it's fairly complicated to get like an actual full album sounding good and sounding the same. And that's where forums and these blog sites, these blogspot sites, would come into play. And that's the kind of community that I ended up being a part of. You'd usually have either comment sections or just a general chat and a whole bunch of people talking about music, which still we don't have that much of now. I kind of miss those days. It was kind of a no bullshit kind of way of talking about music. We would just be a bunch of people where we'd be sharing links to different albums. Either it was a review copy, whether it be digitally or a CD, or someone actually had the CD and then they had the files and put it all into one download button, right? So you'd have the entire album in one sitting, which is crazy to try to explain now because that is so not an issue anymore. But basically that's how it worked, and that's how I got a lot of my music. And even if I knew I was going to buy an album, it was usually, even if I owned an album, it was usually easier to go download it. That's how easy it was. And on top of that, even if I knew I was getting an album, if I was going to go buy it, I probably wouldn't be able to get it day one, so I'd still download it anyways. And then on top of that, a lot of these websites were known for being able to have access to some of these albums before they actually came out. Now, that's where my part of the story comes in. I'm basically just hanging out in this chat and someone says, hey, I live in Montreal and I went to this music store and they were selling this album right now. It was on the shelves and the album wasn't coming out for another like 5 or 6 days. So he didn't buy it for whatever reason. He just came back home and went on this forum and talked about it. And see, I lived in Ottawa, which is about 2.5 hours away from Montreal. And it just so happened that my grandparents live like just outside of Montreal. And I was there for the weekend. Like I happened to be in Montreal on that weekend. And I don't know how I convinced my parents, but I convinced my mom. I was like, hey, like I need to go to this music store. Like it was a music store that pretty much just sold like metal and like punk and hardcore records. And I was like, Mom, like you don't understand. I need to go to this music store like today. So she drove me there and I go in, and as the guy said online, is like, shit, like the album, it's right there. It's it's on the shelves. And I was able to purchase it. I take it, I bring it to the cash register, and I'll always remember the dude behind the counter who's like, oh, did you listen to the album? It's so fucking good. And I was like, no, I didn't listen to it. Like, it's not supposed to be out yet. I didn't tell him that. I wanted to tell him, but I didn't want him to not sell me the CD. So I was like, no, I guess I didn't. That's why I'm buying it, I guess. So I bought it and then I left. And then the first thing I did, the second, I don't even think I listened to the album. But I was just so thankful for, I guess, the community I was a part of and the amount of times that I was able to access music before it was out because of other people and stuff like that. I was just like, fuck it, I need to get this online. So the first thing I did, I go to my grandparents, I hop onto their computer, I put the CD in the tray, and I get the songs online. And I was able to send a link to the forum I was a part of that I enjoyed most, and then people enjoyed it from there. And I don't know, it's just such a crazy story to me, because back then there was such a stigma around downloading music, and like Napster was a whole thing because it was the first of its kind, obviously, but just artists really wanting, like Metallica wanting to shut down file sharing and stuff like that. And it's crazy to hear about and to think about again, because now we pay like $10 a month to some corporation that doesn't give any money to artists, basically. And we basically get the same thing and more. Like, I have access to more music now than I ever have, and I'm paying like $100 a year, and most of that isn't going to any of the artists I'm listening to anyways. So I don't know. I just look back on this moment quite a lot, and I thought I'd share it with you guys. I know there's not much to the story, but it's that's just how things worked, I guess, back in the days. You'd get a tip, or you'd get like someone you know has a review copy or something like that, and that's how these albums would leak online. And I think people are a bit smarter with those things now, so it obviously still happens. But anyways, I just wanted to get that story out to you guys. I thought it was a funny anecdote to share. And yeah, if you like the video, please give it a big old thumbs up, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And I can't stress this enough, I have a Discord server that is very, very cool. We're not a big group, but every day there's just people talking about music and sharing new bands and stuff like that, a place to discover and talk about music. So if you'd be interested in that, there's a link in the description below. And with that said, I'll see you guys in the next one. Okay, bye.